In our game.html, I just put a paragraph tag in front of my text, and I have the close of the paragraph tag after my text here. And I gave it an ID, and the ID I gave it was game text. If we run that, save that. That's what the text looks like. It's kind of wide looking. I want to make the paragraph not take up the whole width of the screen. I made a document called game.css. I'm going to put in the game text. I'm going to go into my game HTML. We called it game text, so I'm just going to copy that name. In my game.css, I'm going to put a hashtag game text. The hashtag is how we refer to specific named IDs. I would just like to make the width of this something small, 200 pixels. Wide. Save that and see what that looks like. In my HTML, it's linking to game.css, so that should work. Press refresh. Now it's all squeezed into that 200 width. I don't like that so much. I want it to go across the screen, but I just don't want it to take the full screen. I'm going to make the width a percentage of the screen. Back into the CSS. The percentage is, let's say, just 80% of the screen. 80, and instead of pixels, %. Save that, back over to here, refresh, and there we go. So now it's taking up 80% of the screen. Let's say I wanted to indent a little bit. I can put what's called padding around it. Padding. I could tell it to be 10% padding. Refresh. It's taking 10% of the screen size, and it is making sure that it's padded around. It's giving you that buffer of 10%. That's not too bad. Maybe 10% is too much. And maybe I don't want the same padding on the top that I want on the sides. If I wanted to, let's say, go to 5%, refresh, that's not too bad. You can also specify like the top padding, left padding, right padding, bottom padding. I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to change the font. There are many different fonts. You can go and look up a font that you like. I'm going to go into my Google and I'm going to write web fonts. So we have Google fonts, we have web fonts. This is by MDN. They're the people that make the internet. They're the people that do the Mozilla stuff, that are responsible for JavaScript. There's a whole bunch of web fonts. They're telling you how to make a font family. If you want a very specific font, you can put the name of it. Then you have a second and a third. Your fallback should either be serif or sans serif, which means not serif. The first font would be like the font that you picked. The second font would be the next one that's good enough. And then the last font would be your last ditch hope. Which font it's taking really depends on the client, whether the user of the game, if the user has that font in their system. If they don't, then it goes to the next one, the next one. The first one, it might be a very specific font. A list of web fonts. There we go. Here we go. Here are the examples, and you pick a font that you like. This is Tahoma. It is a sans serif. What's the difference between a serif and a sans serif? It doesn't have any of those weird little decorations at the top of the V or the D or the R. Let's look at a serif. Here's a serif. You have these little tiny decorations, like at the top of the J, you have a little tiny line that juts out at the top of the X's. You have all these little decoration parts that stick out. They're serifs. A sans serif doesn't have one. You can see the K, the top of the K's, top of the B's, top of the R's, top of the W, top of the N. If we look at a sans, top of the L, you don't have anything. At the top of the Z, you don't have anything. That's the difference. The top of the I, there's nothing. For this J, there's nothing sticking out. For this J, nothing sticks out. That's a sans serif. Look through these fonts, find one you like. Say I wanted it to be brush script MT. Copy that. Might be my first choice. The font family is going to be, and I'm going to put that in quotes, brush script followed by. Now these ones are all saved, so we're probably going to find them. This is my first choice. I picked this as my second choice, and my last is just going to be serif. Back into here. And let's try that as my second choice. Let's see what that looks like. Save that and press refresh. There, I got my first choice, so it changed the font. I want the font size to be bigger, of course. I'm going to say font size. By default, I believe it's 14 points. I'm going to just go up to 24 pixels, like that. Refresh. So you can change the size. We can change the color just by saying color. Then you can pick a color that you want. All kinds of different choices. I'm going to pick dark magenta. And it gives you a color right there. You can click on that, then pick exactly what color you want. Let's say I want something dark green, something like that. Save. Press refresh. Dark green. You might not be able to see that very well. Let's go back and try that again with I'll just pick something like red, like that. Save, back to here, refresh. You can change the colors, you can change the size, you can change what it looks like. I can change the background color. The walls are made of wood. I'm just gonna make the background wood color. If we go back into our code here, into our HTML, and we look at game.html, we have a body tag. We're gonna make the body do something. Copy the word body. Back into my CSS, right, body. This is the name of a tag. We don't have to put a hashtag in front of it. It's not an ID that we gave it. It's called the body. I'm just going to write body, and anything I put in here is going to change that body. If I said I want the body to be, pick something that looks like wood. I'm looking for something maybe a bit orangey yellow, something like that, and just find something that looks kind of wood colored to me, something like that. There we go. That's my color. Color refers to like the text that you're going to find in there. It's really background color I'm looking for. So background color, that's it. Save that back into our room, press refresh. There's the background. Do these two colors look good together? No, they don't. I'm going to change this back to really dark brown instead of red. Back into my CSS, change the text color, make a really dark red, which will look brown to us. This is a lighter brown. Save, back to here. Okay, that's not too bad. I could actually add a background image of wood. I could go to Google and ask it to find some wood images. There's some nice wood. There's wood. Here's wood. Something like this. I could download the image, but I'm just going to take a little screen capture of this. I'm going to go into my preview, Command N to make a new thing, and there it is. There's a piece of wood. Save that. I'm going to save it into my adventure game. I'm going to make a new folder inside adventure game called images. Create, and I'm just going to call this wood.png. Then in my CSS, the body has a background image. And that background image is wood. I have to put that in quotes. It's in images / then we're looking inside images for wood.png. I was missing URL and bracket. Save that back to here and refresh. And there's the wood. It's kind of hard to read this. I could make it larger. I could make it darker. I could do some things to it like that. But so you get the idea. It's very easy to decorate your page using CSS. This needs to be a little bit darker even, so back into here, back to there. I could just make that just a wee bit darker. I'm going to make the size a little bit larger, let's say 36 pixels, refresh. Here's the problem. This is something else that we can edit. I've got a button here that says enter. Let's say I want to make this a little bit bigger with a bigger font. It already has an ID on it. Go to game.html. It is called, its ID is called my input. Copy that. Back to my CSS. Put a hashtag. Different things that we can do. If I want all of my inputs to behave a certain way, input, the width. Let's say I want all the widths to be 300 pixels. Save that. And we go back to here. This is about 200 pixels. Press refresh. It got big. I could also change the height. Let's say I wanted to make that 50 pixels high. I wanted to make the background color yellow, let's say. Copy background color. You can just write the word yellow. All the basic colors are in there. If you wanted a different shade of yellow, you can go and change what the shade is and everything. Then I refreshed. Now it's 50 high and it's yellow. It's still the same entering text. I could make this text bigger. I could change the font so it's the same as this font, or I can make it a different font. Instead of 36, I'll make it 24. The color of the font, looking at the word color, put in really whatever color I like. Let's see what that looks like. Press refresh. We are using this font. We can change the font, we can change the color, you can change the outline color, you can change the background color. By changing this, if I make any input, it will give it all these styles. I go to game.html, and let's say I make another input. And let's call this one my input 2. And let's make a third input, and we'll call it input 3. Okay, so I should have 3 inputs, one after the other. And they're identical. There's 2 other ways I can refer to them. I can refer to them by ID. If I go into my CSS, it was called my input. Okay, and I put a hashtag because I'm referring to its ID name. Press refresh. Only the one called my ID is changed, and the other 2 go back, revert back to normal. I could also make something into a class in my HTML. Let's say for the second one, I'm going to say class is equal to my input class. Let's call it I class for input class. Let's give the first one and the second one that class. These 2 share a class. Go back to here, refresh, nothing happened. Go into the CSS. This is referring to I class. Because it's a class, I'm going to put a little period in front of it to say this refers to a class. Back here and refresh. Now the first 2 have that styling and the last one doesn't. If you want to make all of your inputs look exactly the same, you can just use input. If you want a specific one to have that look, then you put a hashtag. But if you want several of them, you would make a class and then point them to that class. That's CSS. I was talking about buttons, so we could make this into a round button. Let's go back into the HTML. I have a button after my input right there. I actually have 3 buttons. Let me get rid of the other 2. So I have this enter button. I'm going to give it an ID. ID is equal to enter button. I could go to game.css, and here I'm going to use a hashtag enter button because we're referring to that specific instance of that button. Border radius. There it is. 50%. Save that. See what that looks like. Right now it's rectangular. I press refresh. These 2 boxes will disappear now. And this becomes this little oval-y thing. Well, that's pretty cool. Let's make its height a little higher. Height is, let's make the height and the width the same. The height is 50 pixels. Let's make the width, I'm missing a semicolon there. The width, make it 50 pixels. Refresh. There's your round button. I could make the button wood colored. CSS, background color, brown. Save that. Click on it, pick whatever color you like. Save that, back to here, and refresh. Okay, there's my button. The enter is kind of hard to see, so I can make that into a nice bright color. Into my CSS, here, let's make that yellow. Color, I want to say yellow, right? So that was that color. Save that, back over to here, and refresh. So there's your enter button. When you click on it, it says I don't understand because we didn't write anything. That's CSS. Those are all the things that CSS can do for you. The next thing is we want to figure out how to put our map in. That's it for now.